Good morning, sunshine. The seemingly unstoppable growth of renewable energy is science's 2025 breakthrough of the year. Tim Appenzeller S. Since the Industrial Revolution, human society has run on ancient solar energy, captured by plants hundreds of millions of years ago, stored in fossil fuels, and dug and drilled from the earth. But this year momentum shifted unmistakably toward the energy that streams from the sun today. Renewable energy, most of it from sunlight itself or from wind, ultimately driven by the sun, overtook conventional energy on multiple fronts. This year, renewables surpassed coal as a source of electricity worldwide, and solar and wind energy grew fast enough to cover the entire increase in global electricity use from January to June, according to energy think tank Ember. In September, Chinese President Xi Jinping declared at the United Nations that his country will cut its carbon emissions by as much as 10% in a decade, not by using less energy, but by doubling down on wind and solar. And solar panel imports in Africa and South Asia have soared, as people in those regions realized rooftop solar can cheaply power lights, cell phones, and fans. To many, the continued growth of renewables now seems unstoppable, a prospect that has led science to name the renewable energy surge its 2025 breakthrough of the year. That promise comes against a backdrop of downbeat news, highlighted at the UN climate meeting in Belém, Brazil, in November. Global carbon emissions continue to creep up as countries fall short of cuts pledged in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. The goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, always a long shot, now seems completely out of reach. But Hannah Ritchie, a data scientist at the University of Oxford and a climate blogger, is among those who see hope. Thanks to renewables, the long-awaited decline of fossil fuels is in sight, she says. China is just on the cusp of actually starting to push out coal, and fossil fuel use in the rest of the world is likely to follow. China's mighty industrial engine is the driver. After years of patiently nurturing the sector through subsidies, China now dominates global production of renewable energy technologies. It makes 80% of the world's solar cells, 70% of its wind turbines, and 70% of its lithium batteries, at prices no competitor can match. China really mastered this. With the help of the scale of its economy, its manufacturing capacity, and the fierce competition right at home, says Li Shua, director of the China Climate Hub at the Asia Society Policy Institute. As production surged, prices fell, and demand took off. Production scaled up to keep pace, further driving down prices and igniting more demand. The result was a virtuous circle in which renewable technologies grew into an industry that now accounts for more than 10% of China's economy. Wind and solar became the cheapest energy in much of the world. The tsunami of tech spilling from China's factories has changed the country's energy landscape and its physical one, too. For decades, China's development was synonymous with coal, which produced choking air pollution and massive carbon emissions, still greater than those of all other developed nations combined. Now, solar panels carpet deserts and the high, sun-struck plateau of Tibet, and wind turbines up to 300 meters tall guard coastlines and hilltops. See photo coal plants drove a similar dynamic. Ethiopia has embraced solar and wind amid worries that hydropower, the country's mainstay, will decline as droughts become more frequent. So far, this is not a story of new technology. China is more or less relying on the same core technology that the United States invented half a century ago, Lee says. In those days, the US made boutique panels for spacecraft. Now, China makes them for the world, better, vastly cheaper, and in staggering quantities. Technological progress could power future gains. Solar cells today are made of crystalline silicon, but another kind of crystal, perovskites, can be layered in tandem with silicon to make cells that gain efficiency by capturing more colors of light. Zero fully cut emissions. The world needs to treat the thresholds crossed this year as just a starting point. It is worrying to me that China continues to build coal, says Kelly Sims Gallagher, an energy and climate expert at Tufts University. Dozens of new plants were commissioned in the past year, though many sit idle, waiting to be fired up as peakers to meet spikes in demand. In the US, President Donald Trump's administration has declared war on wind and solar development, and cheap Chinese solar panels face formidable trade barriers. U.S. coal consumption is rising this year after a long decline. The infrastructure needed to take full advantage of wind and solar is another hurdle. China is building battery farms to store green power. Aiming high falling prices have propelled a surge in solar and wind energy that far outstrips the growth of any other source. This chart shows installed capacity, a comparison that favors solar and wind, which can produce at full power only a few hours a day, unlike fossil and nuclear. But renewable sources together. To power the entire United States, China's burgeoning exports of green tech are transforming the rest of the world. 2. Europe is a longtime customer, but countries in the global south are also rushing to buy China's solar panels, batteries, and wind turbines, spurred by market forces and a desire for energy independence. In Pakistan, for example, imports of Chinese solar panels grew fivefold from 2022 to 24 as the Ukraine war pushed up natural gas prices and the cost of grid power. For people who are asking, how am I going to keep the lights on in my home? It was a very obvious choice, says Lori Miliverda, an analyst at the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. In South Africa, old and unreliable material advances are enabling wind turbine blades to get longer and harvest more energy, while designs for floating turbines could vastly expand the offshore areas in which they could be deployed. And the giant lithium-ion batteries now used to store energy when sunshine and wind falter could one day give way to other chemistries. Vanadium flow batteries and sodium batteries could be cheaper. Zinc air batteries could hold far more energy. In the meantime, climate scientists are already seeing benefits from the existing technology. This year, renewables helped bring the growth of greenhouse emissions to a virtual standstill in China and put a global carbon peak within reach. But to meaning distance transmission lines to get it to cities, but perhaps not fast enough. Air travel and heavy industries won't be electrified anytime soon. But if concerns lurk in the future, looking back brings home the astonishing progress renewables have made. In 2004, it took the world a full year to install 1 gigawatt of solar power capacity. Today, twice that amount goes online each day. Back then, renewables had an aura of virtue. Buyers paid a premium over fossil energy because of climate concerns. Now, the real driver is self-interest, lower cost, and greater energy security. That change in motivation may be the most important breakthrough of all, ensuring that this year's inflection points are just the beginning. Solar panels armor a hillside in China's Anhui province, parting only for an access road. Distant ridges host wind turbines, another fast-growing component of an energy revolution that has helped ease air pollution and slow the growth of China's carbon emissions.